Guys, can we stop with this, oh, it must have been a professional shooter? Because that's not a hard shot. Like you're talking about, I have this thing, this melon up here, that's a bigger target. But no, I'm gonna aim for the skinnier thing in the middle. No professional shooter is doing that. Here's very likely what happened. This person aimed for the head, and at a distance of 200 yards, which again, I will remind you is not a far shot, you're gonna see about 2 to 3 inches of bullet drop. That's why they hit him in the neck.
Okay, so you're incredibly close, but there's one thing that you're not accounting for. This is that the shooter was approximately 35 feet of elevation higher than Charlie Kirk was, which means that over this 200 yards, which it was approximately 215 yards, 35 feet in that downward slope is going to change the trajectory of that bullet quite drastically compared to on a flat range. So for those of you who don't know me, Taco Talks, I was a firearm instructor until Colorado changed their nonsensical laws here and made it more communistic. So I stopped doing that. But let me explain how this works. So like the older millennial was saying, if this guy was shooting on a flat range so that it was a perfectly level field that he was shooting across, then the trajectory is going to be very close to what he was saying, assuming that this guy had about 100 yard zero. So we're just going to have to assume that he had a 100 yard zero. So the way that bullets work is whenever they leave a gun, they do not go perfectly straight and then drop off. They are actually going up in the air and then falling back down. So it's kind of like a football making an arch. So the actual optic has that perfect, just straightforward sight, but that bullet is going to cross that sight 2 times. The first time is called the initial cross, and then there is the true zero. So that true zero we're going to assume is going to be at 100 yards for this. Here's the problem. While it's going up like that, that is on a very level field. If you're aiming downward, that is going to be a more drastically emphasized arch compared to if you're shooting flat, because the actual bullet needs time to come down and gravity to take its effect. So what actually would have happened here is that this guy was aiming center mass, but at that angle, with it being so high up, you're going to have to do what's called a hold under. Most people think of a hold over, which is at a very far distance. You need to aim slightly above the target in order for the target, the bullet, to be hit properly. But at that angle, you'd actually need to do a hold under to account for how much higher that trajectory is going to allow that bullet to go, simply because it's going down. It's not going to start to drop as soon as it would in other conditions. So in this very specific case, if he was not accounting for a hold under and was aiming perfectly center mass but was just slightly off to the right, then that means that that bullet is going to end up hitting exactly where it was, because he did not actually calculate what a educated or conservative marksman would have done. But considering the actions of this little liberal coward, we can assume that he was not actually very educated in the tools that he was using to perpetrate this very severe evil. So once again, older millennial would be perfectly right if it was on a perfectly level. But since there was 35 feet of drop in that elevation distinction between the assassin and Charlie, it is going to have a very drastic alteration to the trajectory of that bullet, which is going to make it actually require a hold under, not a hold over. So there would not be bullet drop yet. The bullet drop would actually be so lagged and delayed that you would need to aim lower than your target in order to hit it. Which means that if this guy had just flinched a little bit more and his shot would have been more close to a nipple line, it would have completely missed Charlie, and that would have been a wonderful outcome. But unfortunately, it did not, and this coward took one of the greatest people that we have seen in recent history. So continue to say prayers for his family. But we can rest knowing that Charlie was a Christian and that he is with Jesus right now. People are evil. Stay armed. Protect yourselves. Stay safe. God bless.